Welcome to Thunder Nerds. I'm Brian Hinton.
Oh, Vincent Tang here.
That's Vincent, and I'm Frederick Weiss, and you are consuming the Thunder Nerds. So happy to have you on the show, and today we have an amazing guest with us. We have JavaScript educator, the vanilla JS guy himself, Chris Ferdinandi. Chris, welcome to the show. Happy to have you.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here. I stopped dancing just in time for the outro to end, or that would have been really awkward for everybody.
It would have been a skosh awkward, but feel free to dance at any point. We encourage it. I can play the music again if you like.
Yeah. That music is pretty banging. I'm a big fan.
Hey, I'll get something going for you. Here we go. Let me get some. You want to bang to the acoustic or maybe a little bit more trippy? Is that more your
that's nice.
feel?
I could get it. This has got some lo-fi vibes. I could do this.
Right? I'm sure you can. See previous
I already
shows
did that.
no one's cognizant of. Anyway, Chris, we're so happy to have you. Why don't we first, before we get to our audience questions, which audience start live chatting with us, we'll put your questions up there and we'll answer them as they are received. But Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us some context with brevity if you can.
Yeah, sure thing. So I as you mentioned, I'm the vanilla JS guy. I help people learn JavaScript. My opinion or perspective on the web is that I think there's maybe a simpler and more resilient way to make things for the web than is the norm within our community. And so a lot of my education is focused on how we can build a simpler, faster World Wide Web that's better for the people who use the things we build and possibly also better for us as developers.
Excellent. So how did you get down that path of becoming this educator? What inspired you to say, you know what, this is really where my passion lies. I want to help people out, and this is specifically what I want to do.
Yeah. So this is a second career for me. I started out as an HR guy, and through a series of little twists and turns, ended up kind of falling in love with web dev and wanting to make it my career. And HTML and CSS came pretty easy to me, but I sucked at JavaScript so bad. I failed interviews for like 2 years every time JavaScript questions came up. So when it finally clicked for me, I felt like there might be other folks who were struggling in a lot of the same ways I had, and wanted to make their journey a little bit easier than mine was. And that kind of kick-started this whole thing.
What was your big sticking point? Like, what was the main thing that really drew out your entry into JavaScript?
Yeah. So in a word, just ... So like every JavaScript tutorial started off with just really complicated thing, like for me at the time, that I take for granted everybody knows because I've been doing this for a while. It's kind of like the expert's dilemma, and you still see that in documentation and tutorials. Just npm install, just open up command line, and that was my Achilles heel for a really long time. And so I have a tendency to, beyond assuming you know how to load a script and open a text editor, I try to avoid assuming that my students have any base knowledge coming in.
It's fair to say.
Yeah. So how do you stay in that kind of beginner mindset when you're still able to connect to people that are starting for the first time, since you've been developing for a long time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So honestly, the thing that's really helped me is as I've tried to avoid the temptation of leveling up with my audience. So there's a couple of different ways you can kind of approach like a product business or an education product business where as your students get more sophisticated, you keep kind of like upping the complexity of the stuff you do. And I've done a little bit of that, but I tend to really stick with the beginner audience a lot. I honestly just enjoy working with them a bit more. And so because of that, I get asked a lot of really kind of entry-level questions from people who are entry-level in their career. And it really it helps me avoid kind of that trap of assuming base knowledge, because anytime I start to drift in that direction, my students will ask me what the hell I'm talking about, and I can course correct. I have a Slack community for people who buy my courses and take my workshops and stuff, and so that helps. I'm just getting a constant barrage of questions about things people are struggling with, and so it really kind of helps me keep a pulse on, first of all, new stuff that I wouldn't have heard about, but also, if I've done a bad job explaining something, someone is going to ask me about it, and it gives me an opportunity to clarify, which is great.
Would you tell me a little bit about your community and what services you provide as far as coaching, courses, et cetera, and how that works?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I have a few different things. Kind of the entry for most folks is a daily newsletter that I run. So 5 days a week, I am sending out short little emails about some developer-y thing that I've learned. It's usually JavaScript focused. Sometimes it's HTML or CSS. Most of the time it's me kind of sharing little tips or tricks, but oftentimes it's me linking to a great article from someone else or a cool new tool that someone might find helpful or useful. And so from there, I offer a series of, I call them pocket guides, but it's courses and ebooks that are really like small and narrowly focused. So I have ADHD, which means that I cannot like stick with these like 40-hour everything you need to know courses. And so that's probably one of the things that made it really hard for me to learn too. So most of my like stuff is focused on like, I want you to get in and out in like, 15 minutes, an hour or less. And so my courses they're focused on a specific topic like DOM manipulation or working with APIs. And everyone is designed to be consumed in about an hour, either watching or reading. And then from there, we jump up into this 6-week online workshop program that I run. That's actually, I have a new session starting in April. Registration opens next week. But this, the way this works is it drips stuff out to you. So every other day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you get like 1 to 3 short little lessons and then a project to work on. And then the next day, you get, or on the in-between days, you get how I approached it and some of the common issues I see people run into. And then the projects kind of build on each other. So rather than just throwing people into like, let's build some really big thing, you get really small projects that cumulatively build on each other. So after 6 weeks, you've learned a whole bunch of stuff, but you've gotten there really gradually, and it doesn't kind of burn you out the way other programs might, or just trying to do all the things at once might. I've had people ask me if they could just go through the whole thing like at once, self-paced, but I find it works a lot better when you drip the content out a little bit at a time.
I'm curious too, like how, like what was the catalyst to actually build all these courses? Was it your own? It was your own struggles, and why continue to do it? Like, what's your motivation?
Yeah, so it started off as like I'd written up like a bunch of small articles that kind of like, if you looked at them in aggregate, I was like, oh, this. So actually, I was originally really focused on web performance, and then I knew I eventually wanted to have my own business. So I was working with a business coach, and the very first thing he said to me was like, "Oh, I know you. You're the Vanilla JS guy," which I had never really kind of like identified myself as. I really wanted to be like the web performance person, and like Vanilla JS was just kind of like a way in, like to improving some web performance stuff. But eventually I ran with that. I noticed that like the 10 most popular articles on my site were all how to do thing you used to do with jQuery and just vanilla JavaScript. And I was like, oh, maybe he's actually onto something. So I threw together a book called Ditching jQuery, and it did not sell at all. It wow. was like a pretty big failure. It's like a few copies. So I ended up taking the book, breaking it into 6 parts, selling them for like, the way I had priced it was if you bought all 6, it cost the same as the previous book that was all just one thing cost, but, like broken into 6 parts. And it just took off, which was really weird because it was like the same content and the same price ultimately, just positioned differently. And so that kind of took off. And then I started getting emails from folks like, I've struggled to learn JavaScript for years, and like this finally clicked. And it turned out that like my teaching style definitely doesn't resonate with everyone, but for a certain type of learner, like really clicks and works for people. I am way less animated and entertaining than someone like Wes Boss, for example, might be. I'm a lot more blunt and no nonsense, probably because I grew up in the Northeast. And that just really works for some people and really turns other people off. So if it works for you, great. But yeah, getting emails and messages from students who have gone on to like actually have things click, get jobs. Like I've had some people who like this is a second career for them. Like they've finally like been able to transition into the field. That's what really keeps me going. And then every other product I've built since that initial set of books has been students asking questions or bringing up like other things they're struggling with, and me trying to figure out ways to help them work through that.
You know, speaking of this being your second career coming from HR, what advice would you provide to somebody that is in a whatever the career may be on a general kind of terms? What advice do you give them to help them? You know, these are some steps you could take. Here are some places you could go to help you make that transition.
Yeah. So first of all, if you go to gomakethings.com/thundernerds, either with or without the dash, I've put together a bunch of resources related to stuff we're probably going to talk about on this episode, and I'll go update it after the show with some additional things. So don't feel like you have to like write any of this down. But one of the things I have that I think would be really helpful for folks is I have a career guide for web developers that specifically talks about how to find jobs, how to write resumes that get seen by a real person, how to get through all the like HR nonsense. Before or when I was in HR, my specific job was career development for developers and or for engineers. And I was able to take all the like inside knowledge I had from working in HR and use that for my own career kind of trajectory here. So if you go to gomakethings.com/ I think it's career guide. Let's see here. Hold on. Career. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. gomakethings.com/career-guide. That is free. It includes my resume template that I use to get through the like automated systems that HR folks use to screen out resumes, and a whole bunch of like information there. But if I were to boil that guide down to a couple of small things, first of all, it is networking. Networking is literally the number one thing you can do. Sorry, that should be career-guide, not career/guide. I probably said that wrong. But networking is like literally the number one thing you can do. And I don't mean like, go to these like stodgy networking events and have these nonsense conversations that never go anywhere. So the way this worked for me is I identified folks who either worked at companies I wanted to work at or who worked in jobs I thought I might want. And I sent them an email and just said, hey, do you have like 15 minutes to chat? I just want to ask you a little bit about what you do, looking to get into the field. And this was back when, we could still meet people in person without like worrying about getting COVID. So it was usually like, I'll buy you coffee, my treat. Or if they were like far away from me, like we do like at the time Skype was a thing people still use. So we would do that. But I would always ask just a couple of questions, so what does a day in the life look like for you? What are kind of the biggest challenges you face in your role? And what sort of changes do you see happening in the industry that affect the work that you do? And you would get a ton of information. First of all, you could find out if the job that you were interested in is actually even something you wanted. If it was a company you thought you were interested in, you might learn like, oh, this place is actually awesome, or hey, it actually sucks. I don't want to work there. And in talking about kind of biggest challenges and what's coming next, you would learn about maybe some skills that would be important for you to have if you wanted to move into this role. And that really helped shape like my educational path and the things that I did to kind of figure out what was next. What you don't want to do is say, I'm looking for a job. Do you know of anything? Because that's just really off-putting. But doing that puts you kind of in the person's mind as someone who is interested in coming into the field. And one of the like inside baseball or kind of like dirty secrets of HR is getting a job approved takes a lot of time. And so a hiring manager will want to hire for a role and it has to go through all these all these hoops, this red tape. And by the time it actually gets approved, it may have been like months in the works. And so hiring managers will usually start networking, trying to find people that their employees or their friends know who might be good for the job before the job ever gets approved and posted in an official forum, like a job board or on a company website. And so networking helps you find out about those roles early. And it means that like by the time a job gets posted, sometimes there's already like 3 or 4 finalists, and people who apply like through normal channels don't even really get an opportunity to apply for the job. So this kind of gets you around that, like that process. And then everything else is just like, there's specific ways you can structure your resume to make them, a little bit more appealing, focusing on results and not just things you did. But yeah, that was really the biggest thing. Like the networking piece, I call them coffee conversations. So just having quick, short little chats with people. And then at the end of every one, I would always ask like, oh, is there like anybody else you think I should talk to? And it kind of creates this spider web where you start to meet more and more and more people. And before you know it, you have this really great network. And you learn about a job and you apply for it. And, having someone that you've networked with also means you can ask questions like, what is this hiring manager like? What's the interview process like? How should I dress? Do I even want to work on that team, or are they actual garbage people and maybe I shouldn't? All that kind of stuff.
And just let me quickly say, we're not just talking about IRL, right? We're talking about this is also in communities where you can socialize. Yep. Twitter groups.
It's honestly probably easier now than it was 10 years ago. Between Discord, Twitter, you can just kind of reach out and have really casual conversations. Even when we were doing IRL stuff, I'd say at least half of my coffee chats were like not really coffee chats. They were just like Zoom or Skype conversations.
I'm curious, did you ever have a situation where it sort of didn't go well that you can share that you met them and it was bad for both sides, I guess?
No. I've had some people not respond. I've never had anybody tell me no. I've had some people just flat out ignore me. And I've had some conversations with folks where, I came away feeling like, oh, you know what? That's not really like a place I'd like to go work. But I've never had it be a thing where I felt crummy afterwards. I'm also a really chatty person though. And so that probably helps. I can imagine some other people finding me overly talkative and it being a bad experience for them, but it wasn't for me. Now, I've been on the other side of the table too, because I give this advice so much. I've had people be like, so in the spirit of coffee chats, could I talk to you? And where
role reversal.
And where I have some great conversations. I've had some that are not so good. And where they tend to be not so good are when people come in without like a specific agenda or thing they want to know. So, like if you come in and you're just expecting me to like dump advice on you without having specific questions, I think that puts too much effort on the person you're trying to get information from. So if you are going to do these interviews, go in with a few questions. And it honestly doesn't have to be much. The 3 I mentioned earlier is usually enough to like, snowball into other questions, or not. They give you some answers and you're like, oh, okay, thank you. I really appreciate your time. And then you move on. But yeah, that's probably...
come in with a goal in mind, basically.
Yeah. And honestly, whether you're actively looking for a job or you're just trying to figure out what you might want to do in this field, the questions are basically the same. You're thinking internally about it might be different, but you're still asking basically the same questions.
So how was your first job experience? Did you get it through networking? Did you get it through cold applying to jobs? Since you worked in HR before.
Yeah.
What your path was.
So after 2 years of failing interviews, I was at a conference, Artifact Conference, which hasn't run in a couple years. They took like a 5-year break, and they ran one more, and then COVID happened, and they went on hiatus. But it is put on by Jen Robbins and Christopher Schmidt and Ari Stiles, and it is literally the best conference I've ever been to. It was my first like web developer conference, and I met some. Well, I was telling everybody at the time. I'd go to meetups and stuff. I was telling everybody I was looking, to switch careers. But I met someone there who 3 months later remembered I mentioned I was looking for a job and emailed me that like someone on another team in his company was hiring. And I went through the whole interview process. Somehow didn't bomb the JavaScript interview like I usually do, and got hired. And yeah, that was it. I didn't go through like the normal application process. I just, I sent him my resume. He did his like employer referral thing. But yeah, it was, so the company, it was Constant Contact, the email marketing folks. And it was, oh, I'm sorry. What was that?
I just said, yeah. No.
Yeah. So it was one of those things too, where it was like, it was a really great, I loved the culture there. Like really strong emphasis on like learning and development. And I had a really bad manager. So I was there for about 3 months before I left. I went in with this whole, so this was like a real learning moment for me. I went in, I'd been fully remote or mostly remote in my last job, which also happened to be 15 minutes down the street from my house. So the fact that I was remote was kind of silly, but I got hooked on being remote. And Constant Contact was like without traffic, 40 minutes. With traffic, it was like a 3-hour round trip. And so during the interview process, I had a lot of conversations about wanting to be remote. And they were like, okay, we can talk about that once you get settled. And then I got settled and, I was like, oh yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit. And every time I brought it up, it got pushed off until finally my manager was like, oh yeah, we don't really do remote here. And then I quit the next week because just don't tell me we can talk about it if we can't actually talk about it. And so that was for anybody who's listening, like the learning moment for me here that I probably should have known is like, if it's important to you, never accept like a yeah handshake kind of thing, as part of the job offer. Like if they mean it, have them put it in writing. And if they won't, that's usually a pretty big red flag. I ran into this with another kind of job interview process I went through like a few months back where loved the team, loved the manager. They had a really aggressive non-compete that I was worried might mean that I couldn't continue doing my JavaScript education stuff. And they just wanted to hand wave that it was okay and literally refused to put in writing that like my side business wasn't in conflict with their non-compete. And so I turned it down.
Have to.
So, this is the kind of thing though, like as a young naive, like I just want to break into the field. Like I overlooked red flags. And, I get really privileged to be in a spot where I don't have to. But, for anybody who's listening, like if it's really important to you, get it in writing.
And I think it's okay to say that if you're starting off your career, no matter what age you are, if you're coming into the technology industry, if you need to just jump in and do whatever, that's one thing, but once you start getting more seasoned, not so green, you have to be aware of these things, and you have to communicate. You have to train people how you want to be treated, and you have to be upfront with your expectations, because a job isn't just you working for somebody. It should be a partnership where you are providing these services, and your partner should also be taking care of you as well. It's not a one-way street, right?
Yeah. The the other piece of this too is like your first job may not necessarily probably won't be perfect. And it's important to identify the things that matter for you in a job and what things you're willing to compromise on earlier on when, you maybe don't have as much leverage. Right now is kind of an interesting time because companies are like dying for people, but, just generally speaking, if your early career, you may not have quite as much leverage in the job process as you do once you've, built up a bit of career history.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
You know?
Yeah, for sure. Especially if you're first starting out, you don't have as much leeway. I mean, we don't
Yeah,
have
and
as much
there's
experience.
and there's so many other like layers to this in terms of like privilege, right? Like I'm a heterosexual white dude who also has like social safety nets, like if like a job doesn't pan out and stuff. And I know not everybody's in that situation, so like I try to be a little cautious about like giving ivory tower advice around this stuff. Like I've talked to people who like they need a job, and so like sometimes you have to put up with like garbage at first, which really is unfortunate. But you know, obviously like evaluate your own kind of situation and go from there. But the good news is I think we're at a time right now where employers are learning that they can't necessarily like jerk employees around as much as they historically were able to. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes me go to one of the articles that you put out recently on your podcast about ADHD, and I wanted to ask you some questions about that. It's 11 minutes, somewhere around 11 minutes. I'd like to ask you about if you ever experienced any stigma around being diagnosed with ADHD, and just talk about some of your advice that you provided where people can actually communicate this to their work, and it's not some like weird thing. It's a normal part of life, and people have different things, right?
Yeah, so great question. So I was actually diagnosed as a kid, and this was back like when there was like a really bad stigma around having ADHD. So there was kind of two concurrent things happening where ADHD kids were seen as really disruptive, and they were getting like massively over medicated. And also because boys tended to be disproportionately diagnosed and sometimes like misdiagnosed just because they were like high energy. You started to get this other group of people who were like, it's not real. This is just like kids being kids. And so my parents never really informed my school that I had ADHD, and never kind of pursued the medication track. And so certain things came really easy to me, and then other things were really, really difficult. But I tended to learn a bunch of like really hacky kind of coping mechanisms. Like one of my things is like, if I'm not really interested in something, I just don't do it. And if I'm really interested in something, I will obsessively focus on it and like do an amazing job with it. And so in my working world, that has meant that I have had periods of extreme productivity and then like days or weeks where I have been wildly unproductive. And it ends up kind of being a wash, so it kind of balances out with other, let's call them neurotypical employees. But it creates some interesting challenges. And the article you just linked to has some of my kind of tips and tricks on that. But it's only in the last year or so that I've started like really vocally articulating that I have ADHD. And one of the things I've learned is that a lot more people have it than you realize. And sometimes when you describe what it's like, people who were never diagnosed because they also grew up during the like overdiagnosis / underdiagnosis period of the 80s, realize that they as adults may have had ADHD their whole life and not realized it. But so like at my last job, when I mentioned that I had ADHD, my boss, he's like, oh yeah, no, I do too. And suddenly all these things that like I'd kind of been like trying not to let anybody like, know that I was like struggling with, he totally got and understood. And it like reframed the whole conversation around like how I get assigned work and the types of things that like I work on and do. And like, so if you live in the US, legally, your employer has to give you accommodations if you have a disability, and ADHD qualifies as a disability under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And a lot of countries in the EU also have similar laws. Canada does as well. Now, some companies will want an official diagnosis from a doctor. Most of them won't ask. But yeah, you can, you can ask for all sorts of things. Like, for example, one of the things that's really tough for me is meetings. It's really tough with my ADHD to get into focus. And then once I do, if it's disrupted, like it takes me a long time to get back into it. And if I have a meeting coming up, I will avoid getting into like really like deep and meaningful work because the meeting will just completely like screw me over. So I'll just wait until the meeting's done, and it ends up eating up like half my day. So you might, for example, ask to be, have meetings moved to certain times of day, or, like maybe I can just get like the email summary afterwards if it's not critical for me to be there, is like an accommodation you could ask for. Open office plans are absolutely horrific for folks with ADHD. And I used to have like a really, really garbage tech lead at one company who used to love to like hit people with Nerf darts if they looked a little bit too focused. He thought it was funny. And it's like, for me, you just like screwed me up for an hour. So I hope it was worth it. I'm going to go play skee ball instead of doing work now. I hope you're happy. So, if that's you, asking to work remotely is a very reasonable accommodation for something like that, or being assigned like a private quiet space. Like I used to just find open offices and like camp out in them to avoid that kind of nonsense. In terms of stigma, I haven't really encountered any, but again, I'm a white cis het dude, massive amounts of privilege. I'm pretty established in my career. I have like a big online following now, and I've only really started talking about this stuff a lot in the last year or two. So, if you are someone who already deals with kind of nonsense or stigma around the quality of your work. So like if you're a woman or a person of color who already has to prove yourself a lot harder than like I would, I can understand being a little bit shy about being open about this sort of thing. The good news is there are a lot of other people who are also being a lot more vocal about this. And I think a really important thing about doing that is it destigmatizes it. So it starts to become a thing that people recognize as just another normal aspect of life. One of the things I've really started to believe in the last year or so is that neurotypical is either way less common than people think, or just not even a real thing. Like everybody is neurodiverse in some weird little sort of way, whether it's
Absolutely.
ADHD, autism, anxiety, something else. Just everybody's got their own weird little quirks. And we've all just been too like uncomfortable to talk about it. So I try to talk about it a lot now.
Yeah, it's great that we're getting back to or we're getting to a place where things are open. We could talk about things, and everybody has more of an open and inclusive mindset. So I just see the world getting better. For sure.
I have a topic that I was thinking about that it's somewhat drama-esque. Being someone who's very vanilla JavaScript focused, I'm curious what you think of the movement of where you are in HTML and you can use Tailwind for your CSS, you can use Alpine for your JS, and you can completely avoid leaving the sacred HTML space. What's your take on that trend?
Yeah. So I have feels. They are more nuanced now than they were a few years ago. So let's unpack a few things here. Kind of the authoring your JavaScript in HTML thing feels very like Vue-esque. From a making the whole thing more accessible to beginners aspect, I really love it. It reminds me a little bit of like back in the day when jQuery made JavaScript a lot more accessible to people who would have otherwise really struggled with it. As an experienced JavaScript developer, I don't like mixing my JavaScript in my HTML. I like having my JavaScript as JavaScript. I personally find it more readable. Bigger picture, I don't really love large libraries in general because they pass a lot of overhead on to people who use the things we build in exchange for our own convenience. But I think there's some really interesting libraries of that nature that have come out in the last year or so that do the same things that some of these other big guys have been doing, but in a more like respectful way, and treat these components more as like progressive enhancement than like do everything with JavaScript. So like Petite View and Preact come to mind. You mentioned Tailwind. I'm not personally a fan of Tailwind itself for a variety of reasons, but I like utility class CSS big picture, and I use it heavily in my own work. And what I like specifically about it is it makes it really easy for me to mix and match stuff in my designs like Lego pieces without having to constantly create new styles for everything. Like if I'm building a new site and I want to kind of mix up the design a little bit or add some new component that didn't exist before, I can usually slap a couple of utility classes together to make that thing. And so it's really helpful in that regard. I also see utility class CSS as a really nice strategy for keeping the overall weight of your CSS file down. Maybe not Tailwind itself unless you're using their build tool, because like the base weight of Tailwind itself is huge if you're not like compiling it into just the classes you're using. But yeah, it can result in some really lean CSS files, which is great.
Yeah, definitely. With Alpine, sorry. With Alpine, I was curious what you thought in the sense of how you mentioned jQuery. I know jQuery shaped kind of the direction modern JavaScript took.
Yep.
Are we perhaps seeing the same thing with, Vue.js did an approach, React kind of did it, Alpine is doing something, and they're all kind of going down this path.
I'd love for that to happen. That is honestly like my future dream for. So like and we've already seen that happen a little bit. So just for example, right? Like the details and summary elements allow you to create disclosure components that so like expand and collapse kind of things with just HTML. It works in all modern browsers, but if someone's on a really old one that doesn't support it, they get the heading and the text like as is. It's progressively enhanced out of the box. It requires no JavaScript. It's awesome. And I would love to see more interactive components get baked into the browser itself as HTML elements. You can kind of sort of do the same thing with autofill using an input, and I always forget the other piece of this, but I do have it documented somewhere on one of my websites. So let's see what it is. It is, data list. That's what it is. So an input and an associated data list element. You can get like an autocomplete type ahead kind of thing, which is really nice. But I'd love to see more stuff like that. Like I'd love something like that for accordions, carousels, tabs, drop-down menus. There's no reason why we should need to rely on like third-party components or kind of people recreating the wheel over and over again with JavaScript for these kinds of things. They should be baked into the browser, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's like expanding the original HTML document to include more document assets.
Yeah,
basically.
and just using details and summary again as an example, where I think they really nailed it with that component specifically, is it works completely fine just as is. But you can style it. You can change like the icon that shows up as part of the expand and collapse, including its placement. You can hook into it. It emits a custom JavaScript event whenever it opens and closes. So you can hook into that to expand its capability to do other stuff. Like if you wanted to say Ajax load content into it the first time it expands, you can do that. If you if you want to just run it completely on its own, you can, but you have all these hooks that you can use to extend it. And like that for me is the real vision. Like I want more stuff that you can just write declaratively with HTML and then expand with CSS and JavaScript if you want to, but don't have to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I have a burning question. Back to the ADHD thing that you're talking about.
Please.
You mentioned this one thing about ADHD is considered a disability through the American Disability Act. Does this mean you can get a disability like card for your vehicle if you're ADHD?
I don't know, but I'm going to assume probably not. if we're talking about like the handicap placard that allows you to park in handicap spots, probably not, because those are usually like specifically for people who have like physical limitations that make it difficult for them to walk distances and things like that. I've honestly never really kind of pursued it. I still don't myself take medication. I've been looking into that recently. I've been trying to figure out how, like, I'd probably have to get re-diagnosed at this point because it was so long ago. I'm assuming if I talk to a psych, they'd probably want to like reevaluate me. But yeah, I don't have an answer for that. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. And then the second question. Sorry, I just want to ask another question.
No,
When you have ADHD, like, how do you deal with long meetings?
Ooh,
Like, what do you do to compensate?
Yeah. So, few things. One, I doodle like excessively. And like, honestly, it's one of those, like, if I'm not doodling, like, it looks like I'm not paying attention when I'm doodling, but it's actually the only thing that helps me pay attention, because I'll go into this like mindless kind of thing, and it like, it just becomes muscle memory. Like, I'll have like these little sketches that I've been drawing since I was in elementary school. You know, like even like the cool way to draw an S, you know, like just little stuff like that you can just do like mindlessly. And it lets me kind of like keep that I need constant stimulation part of my brain busy so that I can pay attention. The other thing, is like, honestly, if a meeting is too long, I just can't do it. Like when I used to be physically in meeting spaces, I would get up and like stretch or pace the room, which was really uncomfortable the first few times I did it, and then people just got used to it. One of the nice things about being remote, is if you are fortunate enough to have like wireless headphones, you can just get up and walk around. So I'll walk around my house. I'll go grab coffee. I will take the meeting on my phone and like walk my dog. Like, I used to pace around in my backyard on meetings all the time. Like when the weather was nicer, not so much right now. Yeah, but long meetings are like really tough, really, really tough.
That sounds like everything I do too. I also do my laundry when I'm in a meeting.
Right? I need like, and it sounds so dumb, but like one of the things with ADHD is like your brain sometimes has a dopamine deficit. And so like you need things to keep your brain occupied. And so like for me, just like busy work, anything that can occupy my hands. I used to like, clicky pens should not be around me because I will click them like over and over and over and over and over again, and they make a lot of noise. So I started buying like twist pens because I can fidget with them, and it's not as disruptive to other people because they don't make noise.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't have a...
where we can't see what everybody is going through or what things people have, and it's we need to be more understanding of what that not everybody is like us, not everybody is in our bubble, and you know, some people have things that you can't see right away, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you know, related to that too, right? Like you have, if you're at all aware of autism, you may have a particular vision of what that looks like in your head. And I remember having kind of like a real like awareness moment for me that I maybe had some kind of like false assumptions when a friend of mine told me that they had autism, and I hadn't realized it because, they had come up with all sorts of masking strategies that made it not particularly obvious. Most of my experience with people with autism had been like, a very particular set of behaviors that this person didn't have. And it was a real awareness moment for me that like, oh yeah, like there's all sorts of things people are like dealing with that you may not be aware of. And, so like they told me that like, all these like interactions we were having that like, I just took for granted. They had this whole like checklist of like social behaviors they had to make sure to exhibit, as part of this like masking strategy. And, so like, there's just all sorts of stuff like that, everybody's got their own kind of like internal thing going on in their head that you can't always see.
You know, and the last thing I want to add to that is I know you have one of those things which I think you're, you know, you probably don't talk about so much publicly, but which is your love of pirates, puppies, and Pixar movies. Maybe we could diagnose that and see where that comes from. Because pirates and puppies, I don't know the connection there, but you mind sharing?
Pirate puppies. Come on.
Oh, is it pirate puppies? Did I get
In
that wrong?
Pixar movies.
Yeah,
Which
you know, if
movie was
Pixar
that?
made it's a missed opportunity for a puppy
Right?
movie about So
Maybe about Paw Patrol pirates.
yeah, actually, you know, yeah, but Pixar doesn't own the Paw Patrol rights, and so there is a Paw Patrol episode about pirates, but there's not
Many. I know my way around Paw Patrol. I could cite pretty much every episode. So
right. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Frederick, but
you feel my pain.
I do feel your pain, but yeah, no, it's funny. Just I know that was kind of a joke question, but I've been obsessed with pirates since I was a kid, and my wife very generously threw me a pirate birthday party like a few years back. And I remember like this, it just goes to show you like, you know, like sometimes your friends know you better than your family. Right. So like all of my family was like, I don't get it. You know, like there was like down to like, there was like a cake with like pirate ship on it and everything. And my friends were like, yes, that is perfect. That is 100% Chris. You know, so yeah, the love is deep.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that have you seen the SNL skit that they just did, Frederick, on the Paw Patrol?
Yes, I love it. It's wonderful.
It's so
beautiful
true.
episode. It's so true because every time I watch one of those, afterwards I'm like, how are dogs talking? How do dogs have cars? How do they get dressed? Who insures these dogs? Is it AAA? I don't know.
Is this really the part you're hung up on? Because for me, it's how is Mayor Goodway getting elected? Like she has no business running a town.
Right?
And like the real question,
where does Mayor Humdinger come from? And why doesn't he just stay at Foggy Bottom?
where are Ryder's parents? How is he funding all this technology? And if you've seen the movie, are we really supposed to believe that Adventure City was able to build this massive complex for the pups in like just a few days while he drove there? None of this makes sense.
No, none of it. And then Liberty just all of a sudden was there and she's like, yeah, she's part of the Paw Patrol, but really her voice is the voice from Sky. So you're like, wait a minute, that sounds like Sky's voice, but really it's Liberty's voice. It's the weirdest thing. And then they didn't use her cart that she had at the beginning to make that kind of like her vehicle, but instead they went with a different vehicle. I have a lot of concerns about this movie. And that whole cloud thing was really weird with their weather control.
You know what really hit with that movie though was that no one listened to the scientists who were screaming that something was going to go wrong. That really hits. That is like
if they were like, come on, just listen to this person. She's telling everybody like this weather thing is going to happen. Brian, I know you have a thing about weather.
Yeah, Vincent, do you have some lightning behind you?
Oh yeah, look behind you.
Okay. We're getting towards the
cut. Oh my god, he just pulled one on me.
Yeah, that at the end, towards the end of the show, we have what's called a lightning round, where we each ask a question and sequence, answer it, move on. As
opposed to the rest of this episode.
Well, it's a lightning round. It's like quick. Yeah. So my first one is: do you have any pet peeve of yours that you wish you could just get rid of completely because it ruins your entire life?
Paw Patrol.
That's a good one.
Next question.
I would second that. What is your favorite thing? Honestly, what is your favorite thing about yourself? Authentically, what is your favorite thing?
Ooh, yeah. So it's legitimately, honestly, my ADHD. It can be a hindrance sometimes, but it gives me goddamn superpowers. Like when I'm on, I can crank out so much work in such a short period of time. It is ridiculous.
I love that. Vincent?
What's your second most favorite Pixar movie?
Second most favorite is WALL-E.
Ooh, nice one.
Okay, Chris, you see a roach in your house. Do you squash it or trap it and toss it outside?
Ooh, I don't know if I toss it outside, but I definitely trap it, because squishing it means that I'd end up with potentially cockroach eggs all over my shoe, which would then spread to the rest of my house. But I am also like a believer that bugs. But like the other piece here is like, I legitimately believe that bugs deserve life too. So I always trap and release like spiders and things like that, who end up at my house.
Yeah, that's nice. What book are you reading currently for pleasure, just for fun?
I am in the middle of the Expanse book series after having torn through all the shows and knowing that more continues after them.
Mhm.
I
Love that.
I kind of stopped halfway through the book that I'm in. I think I'm on book number 4, and I kind of like stopped in the middle of it because I got sucked into some really good TV shows, and then I just haven't gotten back into them. But yeah, I'm looking forward to picking that back up.
What do you like to do when you're not working or coding or teaching?
Yeah, so a handful of things. I love to mountain bike. I love to hike in the woods near my house. And our last rescue dog, Bailey, just passed away a few weeks ago. We have a new puppy in our house just as of like last week, Ryder, who was pre-named, not because of the Paw Patrol. Spelled the same way though. And he is awesome, and so I love playing with him and taking him on walks. He's a cute, fluffy little Bichon mix, and he is just like the loveliest little thing.
Okay, ridiculous question. I love this. Is one of my favorite ones to ask now. Okay, you're expecting a super important phone call from a family member, a friend. It's like, I don't know, baby's being born, something like really important's happening. Your phone rings, but you're in the middle of eating like ribs or Cheetos. Your hands are completely coated. What do you do to answer the phone? Like, what do you answer the phone? Do you wipe your hands? What's your thing?
If I'm expecting something kind of an important call, I'm using my nose. I do that all the time. Like I'll have, like if I'm like playing a YouTube video on my phone, or like music while I'm like doing the dishes and something I don't like comes on, or like an ad comes on the skip ad thing, I'm over here like packing it like a chicken, trying to like trying to hit that really tiny tap target. It doesn't work usually.
I've done the toe.
Yeah. Okay, I was gonna try that, but good to know.
No, it's the skip ad button they make really hard to hit, so that one never works. But like pause and skip, like on like Spotify or YouTube, those work. Skip ad never works.
Chris, if you could not be around a computer for the rest of your life, what would you do professionally?
Ooh, I don't know. In a previous life, I wanted to run a doggy daycare. That seems like a lot of work, though. I guess if I could be like a bartender on a beach in a tropical like location somewhere, that would be pretty sweet. Or maybe a Disney cast member. They pay like garbage and they treat their people terribly, but I really love Disney. So, trade-offs. I would say Pixar artist, but like they use computers for literally everything. So that's not going to work.
Yeah, that's not happening. Vincent?
Okay, you're in the longest, most boring meeting you've ever been in your life. 8 hours long. You can't doodle. You can't wash dishes. You can't stretch or pace around. What do you do?
Quit.
Good.
Quit. I'm out.
Answer.
Good answer.
What's the last movie that you watched that truly made you laugh?
Oh God, hold on. I need to like pull up my Netflix queue to answer this one. Because I was like, I watched it after my wife had fallen asleep on my iPad, and I was like really worried I was gonna wake her up because I was like trying to suppress my laugh so hard I was shaking. I don't remember what it was, but the one that always does it for me is Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Like that movie is my Achilles heel.
I do love that movie.
So good.
I did recently rewatch Office Space though, and that had me. I hadn't watched it in like a decade, and now having a bunch more like corporate years under my belt than when I first watched it, it really hit me in the feels, like in all the right ways.
Nice. All right, I'm out with lightning. Okay. You got any more, Vincent?
Not offhand. Brian has one, I think.
I got one more important
There he
question.
goes.
How do you cheer up a JS developer?
I don't know.
You console them. Console them.
Pretty good.
These are the kind of
Get outta
jokes I'm
here.
here for, man. This is great.
Two last things here, Chris. How can people find out more about you? Where do they go? Obviously, we'll put links in the show notes, but
Yeah. So I would, if I were you, I would head over to gomakethings.com/thundernerds. That is like my home on the web is gomakethings.com, but gomakethings.com/thundernerds has links to a bunch of related resources, based on everything we've talked about in this episode. You can sign up for my newsletter if you're interested. You can find my contact information if you want to tell me how wrong I was about, Paw Patrol, or whatever.
Specifically Paw Patrol.
Specifically
not
Paw
seen
Patrol.
this.
The JavaScript stuff, I know you're going to agree with me on, but Paw Patrol, I'm sure we'll have a lot of strong opinions on. So,
Oh, I have another question.
yeah, absolutely.
Should I watch Paw Patrol? I've never seen it.
Resoundingly no.
if you don't have children,
but it
and
has
you don't have
puppies.
to,
I love puppies, though. Thank God.
it's not the same thing, dude. Trust me, it's not the same thing.
No, I will say this though. So Disney has this whole line of live action dog movies where they computer animate the dogs' mouths, like Super Buddies and all this thing. I would watch Paw Patrol over those movies any day of the week.
Oh yeah, rubble on the double, definitely.
Right?
Green means go. I get you. Absolutely.
Okay. I'll
Yeah.
add it
No,
to
and
the
as
bottom
much
of
as
the
I
wish
joke,
list.
the Paw Patrol movie was it was better. It was better than I expected, but I went in with really low expectations. So
It wasn't bad. It was definitely better than the show. I digress. Chris, last question here. Can you provide the audience with some closing words of wisdom?
yes, don't learn JavaScript. No. In all seriousness, if I had kind of like an overarching thing, it's I say this as someone who teaches JavaScript, collectively as an industry, let's use less JavaScript. That's really my life's mission, is to get people to use less JavaScript and more HTML and CSS.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, Chris, thank you so much. Really appreciate you joining the show. Brian, Vincent.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you said earlier about how, if you don't want to do something, you're not going to do it, so that you did spend an hour with us. Thank you. And I want to see the doodles afterwards. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we need to see the doodle artwork.
I was really hoping one of you would have been like, I didn't really like this one, but what do we missed comedic opportunity. Thank you all for having me. This was literally the most fun podcast I have ever been on. I know I joked about the lightning round thing, but there was so much just all over the placeness, and it really appealed to my ADHD so hard. This was great. This was it was so chaotic. It's exactly what I want in my life. It was perfect.
Oh.
So thank you. This was great.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you so much, Chris.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks everybody for watching. We'll have some show notes coming up, and we'll catch you next time. Make sure you subscribe. Thanks all. Thank you, Chris.
Click that bell.
Cheers.
See ya.
Yeah, click that bell.